So, we're at the point now where we have these forms and we want to put them on a base so that we can stand them up. I mentioned in the last video that it's nice if you can inspect the form, get down at eye level with it, turn it around, have a really good look at it, and find out which way is most exciting for you. Okay? So one way is going to be more dynamic than another way. And the only thing to consider here is that if you're going to put it on a base, I mean, it's sort of okay to just leave it like that, right? And you can always smoothen or flatten this side so that it sits, right? Sits up like that. So if I wanted it to sit like this without a base, I would take a tool like this one, for instance, and scrape away at that area there until it's flat. You don't really need proper carving tools. This is a rifler or a Surform of sorts, and it's really good for taking off quite a lot of material, but you can use any tool that has a sharp edge. This is for clay, and it certainly works on plaster. What makes that crazy high-pitched sound? A tool like that, that's also a clay working tool. So we can use that to scrape away at areas. This is the form that we made a little while ago. It's quite a bit softer than this one. This one's been sitting for a long time, so it's very dry. This one's still pretty wet. So we can use clay working tools to scrape away at it. If you don't have clay working tools, or you don't know where to get them, you can use a spoon. Spoons work fine. Scrape away at those areas that you think need to be a little smoother. Or a butter knife works really well too. It also leaves these interesting textures in the surface that might be an additional something of interest for you. There are depressions caused by air bubbles, like this one here. No need to carve them out and get rid of them. We can just make it look like part of the design of the piece. So, go around there. If you're super keen about sculpture though, you can certainly find lots of different sorts of tools. These are some really fine tools that I quite like for getting little tiny details. So getting into these very small areas and carving those out. They're kind of like dental instruments. But I think for now we'll stick to these other tools. They're a little bit easier to come by. Once you get it down to a certain amount, you can then use a bit of sandpaper. I've ripped up this sheet. It used to be a full length like this. I just ripped it in half so it's a little easier to work with. So I can take that and make that surface even smoother. The reason for using this kind of sandpaper instead of the garnet sandpaper is that this stuff doesn't get clogged up as quickly. It's the kind drywallers use. So sand that out a bit. So the amount or the degree to which you decide to finish your form is completely up to you. You certainly don't need to make it 100% smooth. I mean, you'd probably be working on it for a very long time if that were your goal. It's probably okay to bring it to whatever level of finishing you're comfortable with. Make it a little smooth or a lot smooth. Work those areas that are mistakes. Try and make it look as though they were intentional. That's always good. Mostly what I'm doing here is just getting rid of a few of the air bubbles that floated to the surface while it was drying or while it was setting up. Okay, that's pretty good. This other side, I think what I'd like to do is make that hole look a little bit rounder. So probably a spoon would be ideal for that. Get in there and just kind of ream it out a bit, like so. That's rounder. And then we'll finish that edge a little. Make it look nice. Use whatever tools you have available at your disposal. For instance, if I wanted that hole to be perfectly round, or if I wanted to make it bigger, what I could use other than the spoon might be a piece of sandpaper wrapped around something that is close to that size. There, for instance, just an old pill bottle. Take a little bit of that off. Put that around like so. And then just work that like so. The idea here is that you shouldn't need to go out and buy a bunch of fancy tools. You should be able to use whatever you have at hand. Once you have it to your liking, smoothened down to whatever degree you've decided upon, clean it off a bit. Have a good look at it. See what it looks like. I'm going to have to clean it better than this though when I go to finish it, because we can't have any dust on the surface. It has to be virtually dust-free. So there's lots of other marks here. Let me show you something else that works well. This here is drywall patching compound. This is made by DAP. But you can buy any old patching compound at all. This stuff is pink when it's wet. When it dries, it turns white. I like it because of that, so you can see what parts you've completed. What we're going to do is we're going to make a little applicator out of a plastic margarine lid. What we'll do is we'll just cut into it. The other thing that works well as an applicator are those baseboard runners. They're made out of vinyl, and you buy them at the hardware store to run against the wall at the bottom where your wall meets the floor. And those are nice because they bend very easily, but they're still super durable. Margarine lids, a little bit on the flimsy side, but for this particular job, it'll work okay. So I take a bit of dab on my tool, and then I can bend my tool to match the shape of my form and run some material into those areas that need it. There are not too many spots here. Of course, you can always go out and buy a better applicator, a proper spatula or whatnot, but this works too. You can use your fingers if you want. I'm not going to fill very much here because I don't think it's necessary, but we'll do a little bit because it's important to know how to do this. Get a little in there. This stuff is quite safe. You don't want to be eating it, but you can certainly get it on your hands and it won't hurt you. Whatever works. Okay, I'm gonna leave that now. Wait, not quite yet. There's one hole that I want to get rid of right there. There, that's good. Okay, so let's leave that there for now. Don't let this stuff dry out. Here's a secret. Sometimes this little edge gets filled with stuff and you have to break it out of there or wash it out of there. Otherwise it won't make an airtight seal. And if air gets in there, it'll dry that stuff out. You can add water to it and make it wet again though, if you need to. So let's set that aside for a minute. Take my scissors and put those there. So when you've played with your piece and decided what the nicest orientation is, see this one I really like it like this. You have to make sure that there's nothing going to interfere with a rod that you insert. So this one, for instance, we couldn't do it this way because the rod would go up and through this area here. We couldn't do it like this either because this is too narrow. The rod would come up through there as well, and it wouldn't look very nice. But this is a good orientation because there's lots of material. There's a solid mass right there to hold the rod in place. So, get your sculpture to stand more or less the way you want it. And then what did I do with my pencil? Let's see here. Okay. That's not what I'm looking for. I could have sworn I had a pencil line here. There it is. Put it on the table, and then turn it around with the pencil against the table. Okay. And what that'll do is it'll make a mark, and then you can drill your hole through the center. So as we were turning the sculpture around on the table, that's where the mark was left. So the hole's drilled right there. Do the same thing with this one. You can see how these areas that we just spackled a little while ago, a few minutes ago, have already begun to dry, and they're turning white. The pink is disappearing. With this one, even though I really like this orientation here, it's not practical because there's not enough material down here to insert a rod through. If we turn it around this way, it's a little better because there's more material down here, but still we have to be really careful, because if we go through this top part here, the rod goes up through there, then it'll make a mess. So for a piece like this, even though I really like it the other way, we might have to do it this way, although it looks pretty cool this way as well. Could also do it this way. This is nice, kind of like that. But this part intrigues me, where the balloon was, and I think that I'd like to have that visible, so I want to put it this way, I think. So I'm going to find its center of balance. It's right about there. Lay my pen or pencil on the table, and then draw around it. Like so. Okay. So that's where our pencil left a mark. Right there. Our rod would be inserted dead center right there. That's where it goes. So now we'll take our drill, with the proper sized bit, and the size of your bit it is dependent on the size of the threaded rod that you get. This is 3/16 threaded rod, and I think it's 5/16. It's just a little bigger than 1/4 inch threaded rod. So we want at least a 5/16 inch bit. Probably 3/8 would be okay. Maybe better than the smaller size. Okay. You might want to do this with someone else holding the piece as you drill. Okay, so let's see if we can turn this so you can see what's going on. So here's something else that you need to consider, okay, is you don't want to drill the rod so that it sits on an angle. It's very easy to make that mistake. So it's maybe a good idea to make another mark up the side of your sculpture indicating a perpendicular to the table, which is what I did right here. So this line indicates a perpendicular. So the drill bit has to follow that line. Probably be a good idea to make another perpendicular in the other direction though. So let's make one right here. There, okay. So there's another perpendicular that we can follow. So if we're following both of those perpendiculars that way and that way, then we're going to get the rod to go in straight. We don't need it to go too deeply. Oh, I hate that squeaky sound. There, that's good. Okay. Set that aside. Put the threaded rod in there. Okay. Now, what we need to do is cut the threaded rod. This is where you need the proper tool. And the proper tool is a hacksaw, a metal cutting blade. That's really the only way to cut these things. Or, I guess you could use, if you have it, a rotary disc, like a small Dremel tool. This is the base from that other sculpture that we were looking at. The way that we've done this is to first drill a hole through the center of a piece of wood. This is just MDF, I think. No, sorry, it's softwood. We drilled a 3/8 inch hole through the center, measured from here and from here to get it right smack in the middle, and then countersunk a larger hole about halfway through. So that larger hole stops when it gets to about that deep. So that's about half that thickness. That's 3/4 of an inch. So at 3/8 of an inch, that countersunk hole stops. And the reason for that is so that when the threaded rod goes in, it can disappear. The nut and the washer can disappear up into the base, and it won't sit on, it won't scratch the table surface, right? Okay, so what we want to do is take that base and find out where it stops. We've pushed the rod in all the way. We're going to take a felt marker and we're going to make a mark flush with the bottom of this board, okay? Okay, like so. I'm going to take that off, take that out, and cut that with a hacksaw or a Dremel tool that has a metal cutting disc. And when we've done that, we'll end up with a shorter piece of rod. In this case, that's about the size that I cut a little earlier. Put that in. That's okay, so that's a little on the long side. That could have been cut a bit shorter. So what we can do is clean that off a bit. Is drill just a little deeper. It's easier to drill deeper than to cut the rod shorter. That's better. Don't know if that's quite short enough yet. Oh, no, that's good. Okay, so that'll do. Let's take the drill, set it aside because we're done with that. Okay, next what we want to do. Alright, so the next part is to get that threaded rod securely fastened to your sculpture. This stuff seems to work quite well. It's called Gorilla Glue, and what happens is when it comes into contact with a damp surface, it foams up and expands and fills any voids that might exist between those two materials that are being glued together. So you take your Gorilla Glue and you put some on your threaded rod like so, and then insert the threaded rod into the hole and leave it for a while, and it expands and creates this very dense and strong foam. See, and that just kind of peels off. This has been sitting for about an hour now, and it seems pretty strong. I think that that's probably ready to connect to a base, although we don't want to put too much pressure on it. So that would go like that, right? And then we would put a washer like so, and then the nut on top of that. For added security, we could put a lock washer between the nut and the flat washer. What a lock washer will do is it'll hold everything nice and tight. If there's not enough room, as there's not enough room here, leave the lock washer off and just use the flat washer. So we'll just finger tighten it for now, and then later we can use a socket set to get in there and tighten it properly. But that's good enough for now, so that we can see how it stands and how it looks. It's not bad. I kind of like it. Let's see, what haven't I told you? This base here is actually belongs to a different sculpture, and I don't want to mess it up because the base matches the other sculpture. So what I'm going to do is take a piece of paper, I'm going to throw the piece of paper over top of it like so. And then I'm going to push let's see, where's that hole? There it is. I'm going to push the sculpture down onto there, and we're going to hand tighten that to keep it semi-secure for now. There we go. Okay, so now we can paint our sculpture and finish it. I have this pipe cleaner here because I was going to show you how to clean out that hole before you put that threaded rod in, but I forgot to turn the camera on, unfortunately. So it's pretty simple, right? Basically, you want that hole that the threaded rod is glued into, you want that hole to be perfectly clean, because if there's any plaster dust between the glue and the threaded rod or the sculpture itself, the glue just won't stick. So you clean that hole out really well, glue up the rod with this, insert the rod, let it sit like upside down for an hour or so, and then it seems to be pretty strong. It's in there, it's not going anywhere. Okay, finishing. Finishing is probably the most interesting part of this project, because there's so many ways that you can go. There's so many possibilities, colors, textures, all kinds of things that you can do. So you have to kind of decide in advance just how you want to finish your piece. If you're not sure, then what you can do is you can do some tests. The tests are probably better done on a scrap piece of plaster. So we're going to continue now. The first layer of paint is pretty dry, and if you remember, we put it on with a paintbrush. What we're going to do now is we're going to use something else. This is just an old piece of sponge. The thing that works better is real sea sponge, but I don't have any of that available at the moment, so we'll just use this. So what I did was I ripped up the sponge and made a nice uneven edge. And then I created several different values of paint. It's kind of a greenish gray, and what I'm trying to do here is create a kind of texture that might remind someone of stone, perhaps. So what we'll do is we'll take a rough edge of this sponge and we'll dab it into one of these values and just begin to create a bit of a texture. and we managed to protect our base. So if you in fact wanted to create a different color for the base, this is the way to go about doing it. Putting your piece on the base while you're painting just makes it easier, right? Doesn't mean you have to paint the base the same. Putting paper like this will certainly allow you to paint that base whatever color you want. I find that it's usually a good idea to make the base as plain as possible. So if you create a texture like this on your sculpture, you want to make either a similar texture on your base or make the base plain. So we would probably use maybe the middle value of these colors here to finish the base, so that the base kind of fits with the sculpture. Probably wouldn't look very good to make the base an entirely different color, like red or purple or gold or black. Well, black might be okay, but to keep the base as neutral as possible, I think, is what I'm suggesting. That seems to be the safe way to go, the best way to bring out the beauty of this form and also support the form in a position that makes it look nice. Just another touch or two. Okay, so that might be all that I have to show you. Did I forget anything? Oh, when you're painting your sculpture, make sure that you clean it really, really well. You have to get all that dust off of it. I rinsed my form under cold running water for just a couple of seconds, like less than 10 seconds even, just to wash away all of the dust, or use a damp rag and make sure that that dust is completely gone. Otherwise the acrylic paint won't stick, and this is the acrylic paint that I'm using, but any acrylic paint will do the job. Okay, that's that.